United Nations Human Rights Coordinator visits Ma'rib to inspect Houthi attack aftermath in Ma'rib. In an attempt to push the political process, UN envoy Hans Grunberg concludes consultations with different factions in Aden. The joint forces deter Houthi rebels' attacks in different fronts in Hodeidah. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Roshan Fouad. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Yemen, Renaud Mary, visited Al Rawda in Ma'rib. The UN official described Houthi attacks as a tragic crime, expressing his concern for the continued loss of civilian lives, including women and children.
This is how the terrorist Houthi militia transformed the residential areas in Ma'rib from a safe place into rubble. The place has turned it into an area of ruins, destruction and terror. A week of Houthi escalation on Ma'rib has brought death to civilians and children who were killed by unprecedented Houthi missile strikes on residential areas. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights visited the place and inspected the extent of violation committed by the militia against civilians. The United Nations official listened to the testimonies of people over the Houthi barbaric strikes. He was briefed on the extent of losses, stressing the United Nations rejection of all hostilities that target, threaten, or endanger lives of civilians. The United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights in Yemen described the Houthi attacks as disastrous crime, expressing his regret for the continued loss of civilian lives. Al Rawda district was targeted by the Iranian-backed militia's missiles, which fell on a number of residential neighborhoods in the city, causing massive destruction and dozens of casualties among civilians. Here in Al Rawda, one of the families wasn't able to continue their lunch. A Houthi missile turned their table into a funeral. The blood mixed with food, and the cries of the children filled the place, which was turned into rubble. Some houses were flattened to the earth. 6 ballistic missiles fired by the rebels in 1 week towards Ma'rib with no regard to the humanitarian laws that criminalize the targeting of civilians.
United Nations Special Envoy Hans Grunberg concluded his first visit to Yemen after conducting extensive meetings in Aden. UN envoy met with the Yemeni Prime Minister Ma'in Abdul Malik and a diverse group of political actors. He stressed the importance of a full implementation of the Riyadh Agreement to support stability. Grunberg also highlighted the urgent need to work for an inclusive political settlement to end the conflict in Yemen. United Nations Relief Chief Martin Griffiths and United States Special Envoy Tim Lenderking discussed the humanitarian situation and efforts to stabilize the Yemeni economy. During their virtual discussion, Lenderking stressed that addressing Yemen's economic crisis is critical to ease the humanitarian needs. Military sources in Hodeidah spotted and stopped sources of Houthi fires in the Kilo 16 area. In the same line, Houthi militia targeted homes of civilians in Al Jah. Earlier, 5 Houthi militants were killed and others injured in clashes with the joint forces in Hodeidah after the rebels tried to penetrate positions into Haita. The Houthi militia suffered heavy losses while fighting with government forces in Ma'rib. A military source stated that joint forces and tribes repelled Houthi attacks on several fronts and forced them to retreat. The source added that tens of the militia militants and field leaders were killed or injured, pointing out the bodies of the militia are still scattered on the battlefield. At the same time, the artillery of the government forces targeted the militia's movements along the front lines, inflicting heavy losses in lives and equipment among them. The Human Rights Office in Ma'rib warned against a humanitarian crisis in Abdiyah due to the Houthi siege. The office reported that there are more than 5,000 families inside the district, warning that 35,000 people suffer from the severe lack of food and basic necessities. The Human Rights Office in Ma'rib called on international organizations to quickly put pressure on Houthis to lift the siege. The latest Houthi escalation has forced many people to leave their homes and move to displacement camps. A new wave of internally displaced people is moving from Bayda to Abyan. The following report has more on this story.
In the vicinity of the conflict areas and the targeted areas, the majority of the families started their journey in a continuous series of forced displacement as a result of the Houthi militia targeting these areas. The latest of which was the displacement of hundreds of displaced families from the areas of Al-Zahir, Al-Humayqan, and other areas in Al-Bayda Governorate to the Sabah Yafi'a district of Abyan Governorate, according to statistics of the Executive Unit for the Displaced in the Governorate, which carried out a field visit to inspect the conditions of these families.
We were displaced because of the Houthi militia, and we suffer from a lack of it.
Many displaced people did not find anyone to shelter them and ease their suffering except the people of this region, who took the initiative to settle them in their homes in a noble humanitarian position that reflects solidarity, mercy, and brotherhood among the people of the same country, despite the difficult economic conditions experienced by the majority of Yemenis.
We have displaced people in Sabah and Hadaq who were displaced in large numbers from Al-Zahir district in Al-Bayda. They did not find any housing and the citizens were forced to shelter them in their homes. We appeal to international organizations to draw attention and help these displaced people.
There is a number of displaced families from Al-Barman, from Al-Bayda to Al-Sabah, Abyan Governorate, and until now the displacement is still continuing. The displacement of 95 families has been monitored. We appeal to the international community and international organizations to intervene urgently to help displaced families in all the camps.
The great suffering and difficulties of these displaced people, which the terrorist militia backed by Iran insisted on targeting and joining them in the series of displacement, taking advantage of the shameful international silence and the weakness of the role that human rights and humanitarian organizations should play. Is it time to stop these operations which have no meanings of humanity or peace and save what remains from the country and the Yemenis?
Joint forces thwarted Houthi attack in El Dola. A military source confirmed that violent confrontations raged after the militia tried to penetrate positions of the joint forces. A number of rebel militants were killed and injured in those clashes. In Taiz, government forces managed to secure field progress northwest of the city. A military source said violent clashes erupted after the Houthi militia tried to penetrate to the mountain of Han and Rabi'i. The rebels were inflicted with losses in lives and equipment. Coming next. In Dubai 2020 Expo, Yemen's cultural heritage has been the spotlight of the entire world.
أقول لك راحت بالغداء لأهلها شلت الغداء وراحت بالأهلها في المزرعة، والمزرعة ركبت على حمار ما حتى نص المزرعة وانفجر فيها اللغم، دعست على اللغم وانفجر فيهم. الحمار انتهى الماء ترى تبقعت رجليها كامل. نغير منها نغير الشبعلة اللي هي البنت سابحة من دور رجليها اللي صافناها طبية أقرب طبية وصافناها لا هي بطلت رجليها كامل.
قلت أزود هلي وقابل لي لعام وطبعته تحت الزواية. صورت.
Welcome back. Dubai Expo 2020 has commenced after 2 years of suspension due to COVID-19 restrictions. Yemen has contributed with a corner that reflected diverse cultural heritage that dates back 2,000 years ago. The following report has more on that story.
Expo 2020 Dubai kicked off on the 1st of October. Yemenis or Sheba ancestors recalled the innovations created in ancient times. The exhibition represents a window to Yemen and a golden opportunity to understand the infinite power of the innovations of one of most ancient civilizations in the world. The Yemen Pavilion took place in the Sustainability Zone, led by the renowned researcher and mathematician Manahil Thabit. The organizers of the exhibition presented a simplified picture of Yemen. The world-famous Yemeni coffee beans' advantages and its unique taste was shown too. As for the slogan, Ancestors of Sheba, it was chosen to emphasize the future values adopted by this vision. The ancestors provided evidences of their deep connection to the laws of nature, their relative advantages, and development incentives based on the art of recycling material and spiritual values.
I think this pavilion really changes the way people see Yemen, or the way people perceive Yemen. I don't think the world has ever perceived Yemen in that light. That Yemen is the cradle of Arab civilization, of knowledge, of wisdom, and it has contributed so much to humanity. It has contributed so much knowledge and so much wisdom, and is now sharing this with the audience at Expo. It's just beautiful. It's amazing. It's stunning.
The Yemen Pavilion, which bears the slogan Knowledge Without Borders, houses an original handwritten Yemeni manuscript, rich in knowledge, in addition to a book by Al-Wasabi, described as one of the rarest and most astonishing books, as it represents a milestone in the creativity of the Arab nation and its literature. The method of construction and composition of the book has prompted some to call it the Miracle Book of Al-Wasabi, and its uniqueness is increased by the fact that it is an original Yemeni manuscript written by hand.
So the design of the Yemen Pavilion is very much inspired by the story of the infinity of knowledge. As you can see, from the first zone to the second zone and the third zone, it's all interconnected. And it talks about the first area, which we are here, talks about the ancient Yemeni knowledge. And the hero of this pavilion is the Book of Al-Wasabi, which inspired the story of the Yemeni pavilion.
I think one thing that's amazing about the pavilion, first of all, is the design. It's very minimalist, it's very simplistic and modern. It's something that you don't expect when you think of Yemen. There is the Masnad script, which is the ancient script that came from Yemen, that is very, very specific and beautiful. And of course, there's the Book of Al-Wasabi, which I think for the first time has been revealed to the world, and which is just mind-blowing. It's incredible that a human was able to write a book like this.
The Yemeni Pavilion consists of 7 areas and displays many aspects of the Yemeni civilization, such as architecture, agriculture, science, culture, and others. The world views this event with admiration, as it represents a unique experience for Yemen to introduce innovations and creations of Yemeni people since ancient times.
I feel very, very proud, and I feel that this is something that would surprise everyone. You know, that nobody would think that this is what Yemen has to offer, and I think that's what we're trying to achieve, like to surprise everyone, and also to make sure that they understand that the Yemeni story is beyond, you know, it started from the ancient wisdom and what the Yemeni can offer to the world. So I feel very proud of this pavilion. I think it's one of the best in Expo.
I will just inviting everyone to visit an amazing pavilion.
The United Arab Emirates inaugurated in Dubai the huge Expo 2020, which is the largest event since the outbreak of COVID-19 and the first of its kind in the Middle East. An immense celebration, and more than 190 countries participated to showcase various technological innovations and exceptional engineering pieces.
An extension of their war on Yemenis, Houthi militia has been trying to falsify facts and steal the minds of generations of Yemeni students. More on this story is within the following report.
It is a real pain for all who work in education in Yemen, parents, students and teachers. Houthi rebels not only poison the educational content with their mentality, but also make it harder for all to get or give education.
There are very dangerous fabrications that aim at reformulating religion according to their familial and racist ideas. These fabrications are evident. The most important thing now is to ask how we could address these fabrications, how to protect our children from these fabrications. Students in Houthi-controlled areas are obliged to study this content, understand it, and to answer its related questions in the exam.
With the early start of the new school year, the matter aggravated. Along with zero facilities to run education in Yemen, there are no books to be taught. To get one, you as a parent or a student have to go to the black market, in which books are sold in a higher price. In a similar way, other goods in Yemen are bought. Sources in Houthi-controlled areas said that thousands of students in the capital Sana'a didn't receive their copies of the school books. These same books, according to the sources, are there in a black market that is run by Houthi tycoons in return for financial gains. The parents, who are confronted with many economic hurdles, find it hard to balance between the future of their children and the basic necessities of their life. The combined and unmounted pressures on the parents may drive them to deprive their sons and daughters of the right to education. Education in Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen is passing through a very critical moment. A moment in which there are not enough classes, there are no school books. The schools may even be turned into military barracks, and there is no money to be switched to education. The pressure on the government-run schools is increasing too, after the private schools raised their fees by nearly 35% compared to last year. As to the educational content, Houthis, according to educational sources, stuffed it with materials that serve their mindset. The time now is critical, and there must be an action to get Yemen from this Houthi paradox that will return the country back to the Middle Ages.
Aden has been witnessing fuel crisis for a week now. For its part, Yemen Oil Company announced the availability of the fuel, but at a new price. Vehicle drivers confirmed that most of gas stations stopped working in different districts in Aden due to the lack of gasoline and diesel. Drivers expressed dissatisfaction with the increase in fuel prices. Such an increase has overshadowed and doubled suffering of people. The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 37 new cases of the COVID-19 in 6 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 12 cases were recorded in Shabwa, 8 in Aden, 6 in Al-Mahra, 6 in Hadramaut, 3 in Ma'rib, and 2 in Taiz. Also 15 deaths were recorded, plus 46 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 9,271, including 1,763 deaths and 5,852 cases of recovery. Here is a reminder of the main headlines. United Nations Human Rights Coordinator visits Ma'rib to inspect Houthi attack affirmation in Ma'rib. In an attempt to push the political process, UN envoy Hans Grunberg concludes consultations with different factions in Aden. The joint forces deter Houthi rebels' attacks in different fronts in Hodeidah. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouad. Thank you for watching.